Good morning, everybody. Your attention, please. I think we are about to start. According to the agenda we'll have this morning, my name is Diaso Olorik, by the way. So I'm the team leader for the technical assistance to the African Union Commission under the CLIMSA project. I will be moderating this session, and I want to really apologize for starting a bit late. You know, we have an early morning session. This is one of the inconveniences, just people need to actually get settled and be around. I will maybe make a small adjustment in the agenda so that we can allow the maximum number of people to attend the high-level discussion. So I would propose us to start with some presentations to settle the background. And then after that, then we move into the high-level discussion. And by that time, we would have got all the discussants on the panel to start with. So the agenda will be as follows. After my quick words, there will be opening remarks from Mrs. Pratt, the Assistant Secretary General of the OACPS, and then followed by a word from AUC represented by Dr. Jolie Wasambo, coordinator of the CLIMSA project. After that, we will have about 10 minutes presentation from WMO by Prof. Chris Hewitt, and on the user interface platform. And after this one, we will have two technical presentations, and I would like to ask the presenter to really keep it very brief, within 10 minutes, to provide an overview of the UIPs in the relevant sectors. So on the disaster risk reduction, SADC will be introducing us. It will be presented by Mrs. Sureka. And then ICPAC will be presenting on water and agriculture by Dr. Hussein. And after that, then we will have the high-level discussion panel on policy dialogue and science and also UIPs, where the panelists will be given the floor to actually discuss how climate can be mainstreamed into policy in the relevant regions. And then we will wrap up, and probably if there are some time for questions, of course, we will give the floor to the audience. But with the delay we are having, I'm not quite sure that we're going to make it in that way. So on that note, may I call Mrs. Pratt to come forward to give her opening remarks.
Thank you, Ulrich, and good morning to you all. On behalf of the Organisation of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, the OACPS, let me welcome you all to this side event, Fostering Regional User Interfaces for Informed Climate Decision-Making. Over the last few days of COP28, we have been able to hold events under intra-ACP Climate Services and Related Applications Programme, the CLIMSA program in short. These events in the Africa Pavilion, the Seychelles Pavilion, the Moana Blue Pacific Pavilion, the Caribbean Pavilion, and now again in the Africa Pavilion, to conclude this cycle of events under the CLIMSA program. These events have all been co-organised and co-convened by regional organisations and regional climate centres from the 6 regions of the OACPS, and have both illustrated and demonstrated how intra-regional programs remain important for tackling common challenges that we are all facing. through cooperation and collaboration initiatives between us. The CLIMSA program partners, that is, regional organisations, African Union Commission, the Indian Ocean Commission, and RCCs of the OACPS, are in association with technical implementing partners, the WMO, and European agencies, JRC and EU METSAT, been working together to develop tools for mainstreaming climate in policy and strategies. A critical part of climate mainstreaming is evidence-based decision-making, where decision makers should have the best available information to make informed decisions. Or said another way, mainstreaming climate services into policy processes is an underlying imperative for successful adaptation actions for achieving sustainable development and building resilient societies and economies. User interface platforms, or UIPs, where policy decision makers meet with researchers and climate service providers, offers a structured setting to interact so as to ensure that science-based knowledge products and services better inform decisions made. Therefore, the focus of today's exchange is to raise the awareness of decision makers of all levels on the utility of user interface platforms to bridge the gap and build a platform for dialogue between climate scientists and policy and decision makers and practitioners and users. The establishment and strengthening of UIPs will undoubtedly increase and improve the mainstreaming of climate services into policy processes in and across ACP regions. Evidence shows that soliciting feedback on a continuous basis with decision makers would be more effective to build confidence, trust, and reliability, and increase the uptake and application of climate services in policy and strategy. Who uses this approach, and what could we learn from them? Mindful that we often have limited resources and capacity to work with. Therefore, scientists and policymakers may have experiences and good practices to share among and between themselves to determine what policy works and suits us for underpinning sustainable development. We hope this event will enable the sharing of best practices and lessons learned in the establishment and strengthening of user interface platforms in and across OACPS regions, and to ensure they are extended to include public policy and decision makers. I have seen RCCs continue to get better through learning from and helping each other to develop and strengthen their UIPs, and I congratulate them for this. Such exchanges, cooperation and collaboration between RCCs will almost certainly build confidence and trust, and will increase the uptake of climate services for achieving sustainability and resilience at all levels and scales in and across the regions, countries and communities of the OACPS. Access to timely, quality climate services and applications is an imperative for us all, including ensuring the mainstreaming of climate risk management considerations in all public policy making processes that aim to deliver sustainable and resilient outcomes. And so I thank you all for waking up early and coming to the first event here in the Africa Pavilion. And again, may I extend to the African Union Commission all thanks and appreciation for allowing CLIMSA to hold several of its events here at COP28. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Pratt, for the introduction of this session and for the warm welcome. I would like to invite Dr. Jolie Wasambo to give his opening remark on behalf of the African Union Commission.
Thank you so much. May I first convey the apologies of Director Harsen Nyambe, who was supposed to be here, but he is in another meeting, but he will be joining us. Hopefully it will be soon. Yeah, may I recognize the presence of His Excellency, Professor Marimutu, the Secretary General of the Indian Ocean Commission, Madam Pratt, the Assistant Secretary General of the OACPS, and Dr. Guled Artan, the Director of IGAD Climate Prediction and Application Center, and the representatives of regional climate centers here present, see AgriMet, SADC Climate Services Center, as well as ACMAD, who are here. Madam Pratt already presented to us and welcomed us and presented the objectives of this side event, and I will not be coming back to that one. But I would like to stress a few things here about this side event. Number one is that this side event is very important to the ACP region as well as Africa in particular. When we look at Africa, it is in line with the acknowledgement which the African heads of state and government just acknowledged in September at the Africa Climate Summit, where they acknowledged that climate change is one of the greatest challenges that is facing humanity, and it's a threat to Africa, mainland Africa, as well as small island states. And because of that, our heads of state have committed to addressing this challenge by, among other things, focusing Africa's economic development plans on climate positive growth. Number two, by strengthening climate services and area warning systems. And number three, among other things, by prioritizing mainstreaming of adaptation into development and policy and decision-making processes. These are some of the things that I've committed to do. Now, in this regard, we see that the fight against climate change brings us together, and it demands that all stakeholders should always be together and strengthen their cooperation as they engage this fight. Therefore, this side event on user interface platforms becomes more important for us to strengthen our cooperation as we deal with the issue of climate change. In Africa, the African Union Commission, regional economic communities, and regional climate centers are working together to facilitate the linkages between the users as well as those who develop climate services. And this is the same thing also with the Caribbean and Pacific under the CLIMSA project. Therefore, I would like to emphasize the significance of effective interactions between producers and users of climate information if we are to achieve meaningful climate action. In conclusion, I would like to stress that the need to make climate-related decisions should always be the driver for those who are producing climate information in order for their work to produce an outcome. Allow me, therefore, to appreciate the support from the European Union, the OACPS, as well as the support from our regional organizations in Africa and regional economic communities, which is helping us move ahead and tackle climate change in the area of generating timely and reliable climate information services for decision making as well as for action. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jolie, for taking us through the objective again and also recalling the importance of climate information and the necessity of strengthening dialogue and also user interface platform in order to better fight against the change of climate in our regions. Following the agenda, I would like to invite Professor Chris to come and take us through the user interface platform. I should know user interface platform have not been started recently, and there have been several actions all across the continent and also the Indian Ocean, led by WMO. So WMO will take us through these UIPs before we can go deeper into the region. Please, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And yeah, thank you for coming on a Sunday morning after what's been for some of us a very long week or two. You will probably need to give me a 2-minute warning. Please do interrupt me because I might take slightly longer than I intend to. But the two previous speakers, thank you so much for introducing the subject. I should very quickly introduce myself. So I joined the WMO just over a year ago as the Director of the Climate Services Branch. And before I joined the WMO, I actually worked on the CLIMSA programme on user engagement. So it's a rather fortunate coincidence that I'm able to talk here about work I did before I joined the WMO and also work of the WMO. I've called this user engagement, so we are talking about user interface platforms, and I was one of the people who developed the global framework for climate services, and I never really was comfortable with a user interface platform. I understand user engagement, and I will come back to that later, but it is a platform. I will now try not to press the wrong button. We have instructions to not press the middle button. Good. So, a very quick reminder of the global framework for climate services as context. So this was called for in 2009 at the World Climate Conference 3, huge international conference, bringing together heads of state, a whole range of actors actually across the climate service landscape to develop a global framework for climate services. And so in 2012, the WMO, working with many organizations and various key UN agencies, then started the Global Framework for Climate Services with a vision to enable society to manage better the risks and opportunities arising from climate variability and climate change. And that vision, I think, still stands here today, more than 10 years on, and we're certainly hearing about this sort of activities at COP. There are various priority areas, and we will hear some of these shortly, actually. So there are 5 priority areas under this global framework: agriculture and food security, water resources, health, disaster risk reduction, and then more recently energy, particularly renewable energy, but energy in general. And then on the right is the structure. It's almost like a value chain or value cycle for climate services. So at the bottom we have lots of climate observations, climate monitoring, climate research, modelling, prediction. Next level up, that produces a huge amount of climate services information. And then if we jump to the top, we have the recipients of this information, the so-called users, decision makers, policy makers. And the key part, the focus of this side event here is this level, this user interface platform, the interaction between the users and the providers. So after the global framework was launched, we recognized how key this user engagement was, and I had the honor to lead an international expert team focusing on user engagement, where we looked at various examples around the world of user engagement to identify examples of good practice and some examples of bad practice. And we documented this, so there's a very short Nature Climate Change paper summarizing the output, and then there's a longer WMO bulletin. But the diagram on the right, which you probably can't read much beyond the first row, sorry about this. The diagram on the right summarizes these different layers of user engagement, so the different activities that can happen in a UIP. So very briefly at the bottom, we have what we call passive engagement. So this is sort of information flowing from a provider to a user, not very interactive, perhaps a website, a web-based tool. And to be honest, most people, that is probably their user interface platform. They are receiving information. We all do this with weather forecasts, and a lot of people, they get the information they need through a web-based platform. So probably the most used approach. But if we move up, there are much more interactive approaches which often generate a lot more value. So we then call this interactive group activities, so much more dialogue-based. This sort of activity, bringing people together in a room. You can start to communicate across the groups. It could be two-way. You can co-develop, all of these sorts of things. And that's probably the majority of how people see user engagement. But then right at the top, some people have a very, very focused, very targeted relationship This can be very time-consuming, very expensive, but for some people, it's much more focused, this engagement. And I suspect we're probably going to focus on this middle layer in this side event. I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but I only have 10 minutes to get through these slides. So what are user interface platforms under the GFCS? So Christelle introduced this brilliantly, so thank you. They facilitate interactions to enable the different actors to come together, to develop, deliver, and use climate information to support decision-making and policy-making. There's not one UIP. People think there's just a platform. That's not the case at all. As the previous slide was meant to illustrate, there's very different ways of engaging. It's very much a case-by-case basis. So we would encourage that people develop whatever is the appropriate platform for engaging. And platform does not imply an application or website. Yes, there are websites that are platforms, but it's more generic than that. So it's a means or opportunity to come together to communicate and share information. So that's what we mean by platform. There are benefits. We've already heard some of these. I probably don't have time to go through all of these, but I think these slides will be available afterwards. But clearly improved communication, coordination and collaboration amongst the different groups. Build trust, that's an important aspect. You can start to identify needs, gaps, capabilities, and then importantly, I think Christelle mentioned this, monitor and evaluate progress, and so we can then look to develop better climate services and use the information better. There are many examples, so this international expert team produced a list of examples around the world. These are just a few as a selection. So at the very top, Regional Climate Outlook Fora, and I suspect we'll hear examples of that shortly, and I'll have a slide on that in a minute. But there's other examples. I've listed many here, including one at the bottom, websites. So there are a range of different platforms. So the Regional Climate Outlook Forums are probably the most tangible, good example we have, and it's a very active activity under the CLIMSA programme. So I thought I'd have a slide on this. So there are 21 or so Regional Climate Outlook Forums, RCOFs, regularly conducted in many parts of the world. So the figure at the bottom left shows the different RCOFs around the world. Hopefully you're familiar with some or many of those. And they essentially bring together a range of different actors to produce a consensus-based seasonal climate forecast. And some of these RCOFs have been running for decades and have been very successful, and some are just starting to emerge now. So we have some very well-established ones, particularly in Africa, and we have some emerging ones in other parts of the world. And these are seen, I guess, as a gold standard for bringing together a range of different actors in a user interface platform. But this is specifically for the monthly to seasonal timescale. That's how they've pretty much been set up. So on the right, we're looking to see whether it's actually useful to not be constrained just by the seasonal timescale. So it's then, as I said, a case-by-case basis. So if a region wants a consensus-based seasonal climate forecast, great, carry on doing that. That's not a problem. But some regions, I'm from the UK, consensus-based seasonal forecasts have limited skill in that part of the world. There are other parts of the world that have interest and information on different timescales. So historical observations, monitoring the current climate conditions, sub-seasonal timescales, seasonal, and then looking out further, annual, decadal, and multi-decadal. So at COP here, clearly the focus is on multi-decadal. I'm not suggesting this is an RCOF, but this is a massive form of user engagement. But we're now looking to transition from regional climate outlook forums to regional climate forums. So RCOFs will still exist if that's what the region wants, but some regions are interested in a broader range of timescales. And so some of your regions may be interested in that. And some regions are trialling this actually. Some are now moving towards covering all of these timescales. So that's the regional scale, and often things really happen at the national or subnational, the local scale. So in parallel to regional climate outlook forums, regional climate forums, there are many, many national climate outlook forums taking place around the world. And ideally the information will cascade from the global scale, so global forecasts being used in that consensus-based product, to the regional scale, and then cascading that to the national scale. These figures are out of date. We're going to update these next year, and this is just an example to illustrate where we're seeing national climate outlook forums and national climate forums taking place. And in parallel to this, we have national frameworks. So we have a global framework for climate services, but have a national framework to coordinate collaborate, undertake the governance to improve the development, delivery and use of climate services at the country level. So on to UIPs. So there's not actually much literature out there on user interface platforms. So a group of us looked at what literature there is. There's a lot on co-developing and co-producing climate services. There are some examples listed at the bottom. And that is a similar concept. So co-developing and delivering is definitely part of user engagement. And so we drew on existing examples from co-development, co-production, some other big projects, Wiser and Fractal, which some of you are probably familiar with, to produce some draft step-by-step guidelines. So good practice for how to conduct a user interface platform. And it breaks down to these 7, we hope, relatively simple steps. So this isn't, you must do this. This is an example of good practice for those who want to consider how to undertake user engagement through a UIP. So firstly, ensure that there is ownership and leadership for that activity. It could be an individual, it could be an organization, but somebody needs to be identified to own this, lead it, and importantly have the resources to make sure this happens. Without those things, the rest of this is going to be difficult, not impossible, but it'd be very, very important to try and identify someone with the ownership, leadership, they'll need the authority, but the resources to do this. Then, this sounds obvious, but this doesn't always happen. Propose an aim and purpose of this engagement and identify who is the intended participants. Again, without doing that, it becomes a bit random, so this is good practice, not law, but we recommend that try and propose, and that says propose, so you can then discuss and agree, but propose what you're trying to do here and who will be involved. And then the extra words, think about the context in that region or that nation. Is it affordable? Consider a diverse group, being inclusive, collaborative, and make sure you're trying to add value. Next, actually engage with those participants so you can then develop and agree on those aims and purposes. So it's tempting to stand up and say, this is what we're going to do. That won't be successful unless people agree. So step 2, propose it. Step 3, actually then come together and agree. Step 4, this could happen anywhere, step 4, but assess any gaps that there are and then try and come up with a plan for how you will respond to those gaps and undertake capacity building if needed. Step 5, arrange how you'll actually operate this and agree on those arrangements again. It's tempting to tell people how it's going to work, but it's much better to be collaborative and inclusive and agree on how it will be done. Next, the principles were in step 2. Sorry, I've taken a slide out. Try and operate all of this in line with considering context, being affordable, diversity, inclusivity, etc. And then finally, important to do this, often missed, evaluate and review how this engagement is going on board so you can then improve it going forward. So for ARCOF's example, they typically happen once or twice a year, and it's important to evaluate that regional climate outlook forum process. It's my final slide, so I guess I'm on track. So the Global Framework for Climate Services was launched just over 10 years ago, and we're now taking restock as to how we're going to go forward, and we're refocusing it around these 5 areas. But I've just highlighted in red, I think, the ones that are most relevant to user engagement. So a key part of a global framework is to strengthen climate service capacity and capability around the world, particularly in national meteorological and hydrological services, but in a range of actors. And so part of this, we're establishing national frameworks for climate services and national climate fora, and as I said, linking this to the regional scale and then to the global scale. So very important for the WMO and all of the partners under the global framework to do coordination. Number 4, the point of this is to generate value and enable actions, help policymakers and decision makers take actions based on climate information. And right at the bottom, provide a forum for stakeholder communication, knowledge sharing and collaboration. I think, good, that is my final slide. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Chris, for this brief but concise introduction to UIPs. I think that settled also the panel, but also the discussions with the participant. Now we need to know what is happening. As you presented, you have seen 5 priority sectors from the Global Framework for Climate Services. And that is what has been actually used by the CLIMSA program to actually develop products that are being tested at the national level by the pilot countries. So now we will see with the SADC region what is going on when it comes to disaster risk reduction. And on that one, Mrs. Sureka will take us through the experience of UIP in disaster risk reduction over the SADC region. Over to you.
So a very good morning to you all, and thank you for joining us, the CLIMSA community here on a Sunday morning. And thanks, Chris, for setting the scene on user engagement. I think that was a very good presentation, and it gives the broad, the overview on the user interface platform. And as Ulrich was pointing out, now we'll see what is being done at SADC level. So just to point out, SADC is a Southern African development community with 16 member states. And it's good to note that we do have a few member states which is sort of overlapping with the ICPAC region as well. So let me just go directly. So I think this one, we've been talking about it so many times, and in the opening remark by Mrs. Piaf as well, it was mentioned. So the aim is to strengthen the climate service value chain through building the capacities of decision makers at all levels to make effective use of climate information and services. And this program actually has 5 objectives under the 5 different output. And just to point out, some of the RCCs, they are already WMO designated, but through CLIMSA, SADC is getting support to be a WMO designated regional climate center. So just to point out, I'm from the SADC Climate Service Center, and we are entering the demonstration phase of the WMO designated RCC. So I think this one has been explained already, the 5 different outputs. So I won't go into details with all the output, just to point out that under CLIMSA actually, it is covering the whole value chain of climate services, which is actually very good, starting from observation, collection of data up to the end user, up to the last mile. So user interface platform, as put by Chris, user engagement, it falls under output 1. So it forms part it is one of the main pillars of the global framework for climate services, and this will be sort of, funneled down to the regional framework of climate services. So under CLIMSA, we are also implementing the regional framework for climate services, and we'll also assist the focus country for our region, which is Angola, to develop their own national framework for climate services. This also has already been covered. A user interface platform, UIP, is described as any structured means for users, researchers, and climate service providers to come together, design, co-design, co-produce tailor-made services. So when we are talking about tailor-made services, so we have the different priority sectors, and for SADC region, we have 4 main priority sectors. So that would be the WEF nexus, water, energy, food and agriculture, and DRR, which is the cross-cutting sector. So why do we need these UIPs? So this is a way to engage with our users, to the end users, and enable them to make the right decision at the right time. UIP can help to promote mainstreaming of climate information in decision making, and what is most important is through co-production. It's not about developing product and just pushing it to the users, to the end users, but it's also about co-production and what is needed by the users. And finally, it's also provide a suitable means of collecting feedback from the user communities by enabling dialogue between the producers and the users. And it also includes outreach to improve climate literacy and understanding of user needs and evaluation purposes as well. And this, as I pointed out, has been covered by the previous speaker. So in our region, what is known as the Southern African Regional Climate Outlook Forum, this one is the most prominent, and we can even proudly say the most successful form of the user interface platform for the region. And we have very good interaction, engagement with users during this COP meeting. So it does bring out the 4 sectors, researchers under one platform. And for us during SARCOF, it is preceded by the climate expert meeting, whereby the climate service centers, together with climate expert from the NMHSs, we sit together and we develop what is called as a consensus climate outlook for the rainy seasons. But after that, we have the COP, and during the COP, we have actually already the task working group under DRR, Disaster Risk Reduction, Agriculture, Food Security, FANR, and Water. So this was what is already existing in the SADC region. So we can say, in terms of maturity of UIP, DRR, especially, and food and agriculture, these two are quite at a good level of maturity. But when it comes to energy, we see it is now emerging out. And as far as water is concerned, we can say it's still there is good interaction. So how we are proposing to sort of implement and also formalize this UIP is we are using the SADC forum. And for example, in September, we had a physical meeting during the COP, and we invited over 80 participants who came together under this SARCOF forum from these different sectors, water, energy, food and agriculture. And I have to admit, from the energy sector, this was the first time that we were able to physically invite them. And there we had interaction in different working session, breakout session, and it provided us opportunity to collect more information from these key stakeholders, and it gave us an idea how we are going to implement fully this UIP and how are we going to formalize these UIPs. So it is based on consultation of regional stakeholders, and this is part of the CLIMSA program. I will come back to this slide again maybe. So in the course of this CLIMSA program, we had also virtually through one-to-one consultation, conducted interviews so as to gather information from our regional stakeholders representing the WEF Nexus and the DRR, and also from our own directorate, so under the SADC directorate. So for example, we conducted this consultation with the SADC Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, commonly known as SACRI, UN World Food Programme, the Food, Agriculture, Natural Resources Policy Analysis Network, which is an intergovernmental organization, then Africa Risk Capacity, OCACOM, which is a river Basin Water Commission Organization for the Okavango region, the Food and Agricultural Organization for the Southern Africa region, the SASCL, which is the Southern African Science Service Center for Climate Change and Adaptive Land Management, based for Angola, Namibia, South Africa, and also GIZ. So we did have this consultation, which was done prior to SARCOF, and this provided us like a good starting point on user engagement, because most of these organizations, actually, they were not even aware of some of the services that we are providing. So this is also helping us to co-develop a product for their specific needs, for their specific sectors. So the recommendation that emerged out of this consultation was like to provide an all year round platform for interaction, because SARCOF is done only once or twice per year. Now it is conducted twice per year. And there was also this push to establish an appropriate UIP format, and depending on the needs of the users, like not one platform for which fit all. And there was also this proposal to use these UIPs for capacity building, excuse me, for training and for workshopping. So this one I've already mentioned. Yeah. So just to point out, like through this, when we are talking about UIP, we are not limiting ourselves to the SARCOF engagement, but we're also developing a community of practice. And this community of practice, we are trying to develop from the best practices of ICPAC, because ICPAC, they already have the community of practices for climate services. So this is under development. We have already launched the lunch and learn session. So this is more informal interaction, engagement with the users. So in November, we had the first lunch and learn session, and based on the feedback of our users, it seems that they prefer quarterly engagement. So this will be mostly on virtual mode. For the time being, the lunch and learn session, which is based on more academia, kind of a platform. It will be initially driven by SADC CSC, but then after that, we want it to be championed by the users, by the key stakeholders. And then, of course, as mentioned, there are other passive user engagement platforms. The website is already there, and through CLIMSA, we are revamping the website. We are also adding the online help desk to this revamped website. So in the process of the implementation of the user interface platform at regional level, we are in the process of analyzing the feedback that was collected during the previous SARCOF in September, which was done in Mauritius. And we are also customizing product and services for the DRR sector, for the energy sector. As I just mentioned, for energy sector, we are still lagging behind as compared to other regions. So we are sort of accelerating the process of engaging with these sectors, especially energy sector. And we're also in the process of drafting the term of reference for the sectorial UIP, that is for the WEF Nexus and DRR. As I said, informally with DRR and with food and agriculture, we have very good engagement. But through CLIMSA, we are trying to push a bit ahead of it and try to formalize these UIP. And we have our upcoming SARCOF, which is in January, so we want to seize this opportunity and continue with the momentum that has been already, that is already there. And I also pointed out that we'll be formally launching the community of practice and the online help desk at the next SARCOF. That's all I have on my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Sureka. I think you owe me 3 minutes, but it's okay, we will catch up. I just want to appeal on the next presenters to really keep the presentations on time because we have a high-level discussion. So we need to give enough time to our decision makers to give a feedback because this is also the platform for us, of opportunity for us to discuss with them and see how we can actually take into account their own needs in our UIPs. So Dr. Romeo Nkurunziza will be taking us through the UIP across the continent through ACMAT on water and what? And health. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, moderator, for giving me this opportunity to speak on UIP at a continental level. These last 2 weeks, it looks like if we keep the momentum and then the eager to do the good thing, we can beat the climate change and bring the climate to its original behavior. As I said, my name is Romeo Nkurunziza. I'm supporting ACMAD to deliver climate services. Today, I'm going to present you the continental user interface for water and health. But note that we have got also DLR, we have got also agriculture. But today I'm going to go through this. The presentation will go through the background which is going to lead us to our first board. This presentation is going to be delivered into 2 parts. The first part is going to look at the water. The second part is going to look at the health. So the introduction will lead us to the first part, which look at the user interface platform. And then we're gonna look at together the expected product and the contribution from the RCCs and the hydrological communities, and then the way the UIP can be operationalized in the most efficient manner. The next part, we go through the health part, which is also we're going to go also explain the user interface for health, the product available, the ongoing initiative and the perspectives, and then we're going to go through the concluding remark and then what we think can be done. So before that, maybe those who doesn't know ACMAD was created in it was created through Resolution 540 of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Conference of Ministers in April 1985. That was following the drought of 70s and 80s. Then since the ACMAD is established in Niamey, Niger since October 1995. So has been mandated to deliver 4 key areas is to enhance African countries that through their NMHS's capability to understand, to anticipate, manage the impact of weather and the climate fluctuation, to support the achievement of sustainable development and the poverty reduction. It has also mandated to consolidate weather, climate monitoring efforts in Africa, better understand the Africa weather system such as monsoon, and improve forecasts. It also have been mandated to facilitate the exchange of information, experiences, and expertise, and strengthen sustainable institutional mechanism. The last one, but not the least, it has to provide advanced notice on potential weather and the climate-related hazard, and information for the implementation of policies for vulnerability reduction and adaptation to climate variability and climate change, of course. Now, the UIPs, the continental UIPs, has been established in 2022 in July, from 26 to 29 July 2022, where we managed to create user interface platforms for agriculture, water, DRL, and health. So the terms of reference and the rule of procedures using WMO guidance document for the platform has been established and are available to support their operationalization. So that's the first part of the UIP. That's Water User Interface Platform. So I'm not going to go through explaining the importance of user platforms. We have been had enough, but this is how we created it. Once we gathered all the stakeholders in the water sector, we identified the risk, and then we came up with the product and the services that are going to solve or to respond to the risk identified. So we identified the monitoring heavy rains, dry and wet spells, floods and drought, high temperature watches, and issue warnings as a product and the services. Also, it's to conduct impact-based daily to seasonal forecast of precipitation, temperatures, look at the high and the low flow or water levels. Also, we need to conduct climate risk assessment over water basins and develop risk profiles over these basins. Also, we need to develop web or AI, artificial intelligence, that monitors and detects extremes in really and time warning and alert, thereby enhancing the common alerting protocol, COP. We also have to embrace the hydrological status and outlook systems, which is monitors and predict global freshwater and the hydrological conditions. By the way, this has happened recently in Congo Republic. I got this video through a platform, WhatsApp platform for user interface for Central Africa. So the activities for the platform is to assess of water availability, both surface and the groundwater. Again, is to conduct risk assessment for the water sector. We need to monitor the drought, flood watches, and the issue warnings. We have to prepare a device on water levels for water management in dam, lakes, river, and so forth. We have also to train and exchange between the climate services providers and the water expert. We need to create that interaction. And the need for development and update of climate and the water information systems with climate, stream flow, water levels data, and available infrastructures for water management. There is a need to update, to iterate, share climate or water data, and information among stakeholders. There should be a monitoring and evaluation of all the above activities, and then act on lesson learned. So the rules of procedures, the chairs of the UIP, the proposition was AUC or AMCAW, and the secretariat will be played by Ahmad or a number. It's African Network of Basin Organization, and the frequency of the meetings will be quarterly or ad hoc as required. That's also the same video in Congo Republic. So now, when we meet the stakeholders, we grouped them into 3 categories. We identified the decision makers, the knowledge producers, and the users. And then we identified at which level they have to, the responsibility, the level of operation, whether it's local, national, or continental. So I'm not going to read through, but this is the methodology we used to map the stakeholders. So now it's the end of the water user interface platform. We're going to move to the second part of the session for health. So now, our moderator is asking me to go quick. So for water user interface platform, the expected that's still on the water. Those are the products for water user interface platform. We do the forecasting. We turn the forecasting part into a brief for policy and decision makers so that they can understand it and turn into something a policy maker can read and understand. But we don't stop there. We have to go through the other organization. We do co-production. And then from the brief for policy makers, we have to go and identify the hot spot countries, impact-based forecasting. As you see here, it was in July to October 2022. We worked with OCHA to identify the impact, what the impact is going to have on West Africa. This is the kind of co-production between ACMAD and OCHA. This is, we propose how we can synergize all the tools. We have got so many tools. We've got so many systems. If we put them together and then if we make sure those systems, they pull together towards the same goal, we'll be able to achieve our goal. So that's the end of water user interface. Now it comes to water sector, health sector. Those are the organizations that are making the platform for now. But the list is increasing, and then we want more organizations to join. So the chair is elected from the CLIM Health Network. The secretariat is ACMAD. The frequency of the meetings will be twice a year or ad hoc, on ad hoc basis. The activities, they identify the climate risk for health sector was flood, drought, heat and cold waves, dust and haze episode, air pollution and humidity. Those are activities we identified to respond to the risk identified. So I'm not going to read through, but this is how the methodology we use to create a water user interface for health. Those are the product requirements, clear weather forecast on daily, weekly, and the monthly and the seasonal forecasting. There's the dust and the particulate matter concentration in the air, and so forth. Those are activities that are going to respond to the problem identified. Again, those are the products available for health. As you can see, it's similar to the water, but we can't separate the water and the health. They are all interconnected. So the availability of such a product is available I think is valid for 4 months. Is available for 4 months and is updated regularly. Another product and the services available is this product is delivered every 2 weeks during meningitis outbreak. That meningitis product. So we have to identify the phenomena, the hazard, the potential impact, and the measures that can be taken to make sure that this problem is responded to. That's another heat wave product that contributes to the health sector. It's the same as previously, and is available on Monday and Thursday. That air quality monitoring, we have got some devices that monitors the air pollution. So I think I went over the time, those are ongoing initiatives and perspectives. Those are the concluding remarks. For the concluding remarks, we need to make sure everything are integrated and work together, put together in the same direction so we can deliver our mandate. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Romeo. Again, I want to really ask to stick on time. I think we have already negotiated to have decision makers to stay longer to see those presentations. So please go straight to the point so that we stick on the time to allow them to get sufficient time to address us. Dr. Usain, please, can you come forward just briefly to take us through? Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Hussein. I'm a climate scientist at ICPAC. I will try to be very brief. So I'll be focusing on the development of this regional user interface platform over the Eastern Africa region, particularly for agriculture and water sector. This has been covered by the previous speakers. So the user interface platform is one of the pillars of this, the global framework for climate services. And it's defined as a structured means for the users, researchers, and producers to come together to co-develop climate products and information. So it facilitates coordination, communication, and also build trust. So one of the forums that we used for the Eastern Africa region is the Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forum. This forum has been running for the last 20 plus years. So this forum brings together the researchers, the producers, and users of climate information from the different sectors. So it is one of the more than 21 RCOFs worldwide. During this forum, the users and the producers, they come together, co-design and co-develop the climate information. So we organize the Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forum 3 times a year for the 3 main rainfall seasons. One is in February for March to May rainfall season, and the other one is in May for JJS season, that is June to September rainfall season, which was one of the main rainfall season for the northern part of the region, and the other one in August for October to December rainfall season. So what are the process of this Greater Horn of Africa Climate Outlook Forum? So we have the pre-COP workshops before the main GACOF event. So the pre-COP workshops includes one, the pre-CAGOF capacity development workshop that is for the climate scientists. So we bring forecasters from the IGAD member states and co-develop the regional downscaled and national downscaled climate information. The other one is the co-production workshop. This one is very important, and during this event, we introduce new products for the sector users. We collect feedback from the users and share lessons learned and best practices. Then there is another event after the co-production workshop, which is the sectoral meeting. And during the sectoral meeting, what we do is we review the performance and impacts of the previous rainfall season and generate advisories for the coming rainfall season based on the seasonal climate outlook forum. Then we have the main GACOF event. So this one is held in hybrid format. And it's open for everyone. And during this event, we present the consolidated regional climate outlook forum, outlook and the response strategies with the wider audience. So during this event, there will be the GACOF statement, which contains the key messages of the climate outlook and will be disseminated So this is just showing the examples of the different working groups from the different sectors discussing the implication of the seasonal climate outlook. We have the DRM working group, the livestock, conflict, water, agriculture and food security, and most importantly, we have the media who can communicate and disseminate also the climate information. So it's not only the event, we have key outcomes of this, the GACOF. One is a press release. So this one contains the key messages of the outlook and the expected impact. And this one is intended for the general users. So this is a 1-2-page document, contains the key information of the seasonal climate outlook form, the seasonal climate outlook and the impacts. And this has been translated into different languages. So for example, for the last GACOF, the summary, the press release has been translated into 5 different languages: French, Arabic, Swahili, and also in Somali language. I think that one is very, very key. Then the other key product is this summary for decision makers. So the summary for decision makers, as you see it on the right, which contains the advisories, and this one is intended for the decision makers and the users. So the summary for the decision makers, it contains the key information on the impact of the climate for the coming season, for the specific sector and also for the specific country. Then we have also the technical statement. This one contains the key information again on the data sets that we use to produce the seasonal climate outlook and as well as the methodologies. And this is mainly for the technical people who want to see or review the methods and also the data sets that we use to develop the regional climate outlook. Now coming to the sector-specific user interface platform, we have a very vibrant platform which is called the Food Security Nutrition Working Group. It's a regional platform for coordination of food security and nutrition, early warning and advocacy. So this one is co-chaired by the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, and FAO, and it covers 11 countries, 8 IGAD, and 5 non-IGAD member states, including the Democratic Republic of Congo and Central African Republic. And it has a member of more than 80 organizations, including the UN organization, the private sectors, the research institutions. And currently, the platform has more than 1,200 email subscribers. So what this working group does is they have this regular monthly meetings, and they evaluate the regional food security and nutrition conditions, and also they project the expected food security conditions in the region based on the expected climate condition. The assessments they do includes the climate condition, the crop and livestock condition, displacement, market dynamics, food security condition, and also the humanitarian responses. And they produce key products. One of them is this monthly food security nutrition statement, and they also produce special reports. And currently, we are developing a similar user interface platform for water sectors with support of the CLIMSA project. And this one is to provide for regular and sustained dialogue, communication, interaction, and coordination amongst the key water users. So we have done a number of activities with this one. So we started with the stakeholder mapping. So we identified the key regional users. So we identified more than 200 potential members for this one. And we started setting up the UIP with the key users from the member states, from the Ministry of Water and Energy sector. And there has been also agreed on selecting a chairmanship and also a secretary. So the chairmanship will be on a rotational basis from the member states, and the secretary will be ICPAC, which will be now leading the organization of these regular meetings. And the team also agreed quarterly hybrid meetings, and they have also held a number of engagements during the pre-GACOF events. So what we'll be doing, so these are the activities that we did in the development of this regional user interface platform for water sector. So what we'll be doing next is invite the other potential members that we identified through the UIP, identify the capacity gaps, and develop and implement communication, outreach, and also monitoring and evaluation plans. So this will be what we'll be doing next for the regional user interface platform for water sector. Thank you. I hope I kept time.
I think it kept so good in time that people forgot to upload. Thank you very much, Dr. Hussein. Now, I think I will not comment on what he has already presented because we are running out of time. We still have about 25 to 30 minutes to listen to our decision makers. And it's an opportunity for us to actually listen to them and see what are their expectations as decision makers for us to take into account during our development of products. So allow me to recognize the presence again of Professor Marimutu, the Secretary General of the Indian Ocean Commission, Dr. Artan, Director of ICPAC, and Mrs. Pratt, that you have seen is here giving the talk already. So I would like to invite you to take a seat and to address us on your expectations with regard to climate services and user interface platform. African Union Commission will be represented by Dr. Jolie. Please, sir, you are welcome. Agreement, represented by Dr. Seydou Traoré. You are also welcome, sir. Okay. Okay, I think you are, we are set? Okay, thank you. This is a big opportunity for us and we will not miss it because usually when we are service providers, we don't have the opportunity to interact before we go into our lab to cook our products. And sometimes they don't fit your needs. It's also an opportunity for you to actually address us about your expectations when it comes to using climate information into your daily and long-term planning. So I will first give the floor to Professor. Over the Indian Ocean Commission, probably a lot of policies have been put in place to actually alleviate the impact of climate change on the states. According to you, do you think that products that are put on the table for you to use are actually fit for purpose? And what could be the contribution of the science of climate that could actually fit your expectation for you to fulfill your mandate?
Alors, pour répondre rapidement,
So to answer quickly, because there is not much time, I would say that at AUC we are an intergovernmental company and we don't really decide on the policies of the member states, but we belong to the information production in some ways. But what is really important is that we have to reduce the gap between the scientific information databases and the decision-making, political decision-making. I think it's important to bring that. So we have to ask for all the sciences, the physical science, social science, because the non-linear part that we have in our project are come from political lines that were not really understood. So I will give a point, so please be indulgent. On the way I see things, our institutions, regarding what the science can produce today after the second industrial revolution, it's quite medieval because it's the capacity to meet our political clients. It's not the way of answering to the whole population, the community. So there is a point to reduce between the community and the decision makers. So we are in an ocean, in Sewi, and ocean sciences, like climate sciences, they have no borders. The information concerns all the member states and has no borders, so we need a lot of coordination. And I think that our region, even if it's progressing, it still has a deficit in terms of database to take global decision, not only at the regional level. So we are going in the right direction, but we have 2 points that we have to work on. It's the link, I would say differently, the quality of the institution for the decision making and the importance in itself of those databases and how we use them globally and at the level of the member state. So here is my first feeling.
Okay, merci bien.
Thank you, Professor.
I think I should have also just started with that. Prof has actually addressed you on what could be the role of the Indian Ocean Commission, play a coordination role to ensure that actually the member states are also participating to the development of the services, because climate doesn't have any frontier and there is no border, so we need to put our efforts together. I would also shift the same question to Mrs. Pratt, the Assistant Secretary General of OACPS, to hear from you. What could be your expectation to us as service providers when it comes to climate information, but also user interface platform to mainstream into your decision making?
Well, can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay, great. I mean, I think that one of the things that's quite striking is
the interpreting stops.
we do need to be able to raise the level of awareness between our policymakers, and I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion on that. But how do we actually inculcate both climate and disaster risk considerations in development planning and processes? I would offer that the CLIMSA program and a lot of the work that's being done here needs to be made more visible in member states' discussions and in some of those settings at regional level but also at national level to involve not only line ministries and sector ministries but also the departments or the central agencies for finance and economic planning. I'm not certain that we necessarily do that very well, but we do need to be able to develop some sort of a business case to demonstrate to our member states the importance of having this information so that policies are that much more robust, decisions are based on better information. And so those objectives that we have for development, for our sustainable development are enduring and that we're able to build that level of resilience into these plans and policies. I would offer that it does start with, if I take, for example, the OACPS, to be able to have less of just reporting on, for example, the progress of implementation of CLIMSA, but really what CLIMSA does and what CLIMSA can do for member states in making a difference to their development in terms of public policy making, planning, and then the actual practice on the ground. So that's all I would say. And some of that is not just about yourselves as regional climate centres and so on, but it is actually about being able to tell that story so policymakers don't have to second guess, that they ask for this information, that they say, if we're going to build this particular process, we need to have multiple stakeholders, but we also need to have certain kinds of information to be able to make those policies that much more robust and impactful. So I hope that sort of answers it, not in the most eloquent way, but anyway, just some sort of contribution in terms of we've got to be able to tell that story, we've got to be able to build that business case. I think that if climate services and climate providers are able to tell that story in an easy way, I mean, because scientists tend to communicate in ways that are maybe not always accessible to Luddites like myself, I do feel that actually resourcing climate centres, climate services, hydro met offices and so on will be that much easier because they realise how important a service it is, to be able to have sustainable development and build resilience. Sorry to go on a little bit more, but I thought that might just reinforce a few things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it makes it clear. Probably the audience will still have some few questions just in the last 2 to 3 minutes to ask, and probably you might still come back to what you have just said. So, sorry, I didn't follow any specific protocol. It's guided by the nature of the questions that we are going to ask. So typically we address the policymakers, and then the technical institution will also come in afterwards. So I will shift over to Dr. Jolie from AUC side to also address us in the same question about the expectation.
Thank you very much for that question. First, the question is our expectations from the those who produce climate information for decision making. So number one, what we have to notice is that decision making is a process of making choices. So if the decision making is a process where we want to make choices on alternatives, on a course of action, number one thing that you need, therefore, is that you need to realize that you want to make a decision. If you realize that you want to make a decision, then the question comes in now. What is your need? So in that regard, what we expect from those who produce information is to understand our needs, to understand the needs of the policymakers. That is number one. The number two, you understand the need, then the next thing to do is, yes, you have understood the need. What then next and what then follows? What therefore do we expect from these producers of climate information is that when they are producing the information, they should ensure that the information that they will be producing will produce an outcome that the one who wants that information would want, that would influence something. So therefore there is need for us to engage with the producers of information to ensure that we have an outcome that influences action. And thirdly, which would be also very important, which was also touched on by Madam Pratt, is the issue to say that if you give me information, do I have the capacity to interpret that information? Do I understand that information? Therefore, in the way that information is given to policymakers, we should also make sure that we present in a language or in a format in a way that they would understand. And lastly, which might also be very important, is that when producing such information, we should take into consideration the socio-cultural environment. Otherwise, it won't be necessary. For example, in disaster risk reduction, they're focusing on impact-based forecasting. If you don't understand the socio-cultural environment and what is there, that what you produce will not be necessary, will not achieve its purpose. So therefore, we would need interaction to ensure that we get that which we want from them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jolie. I think, audience, you are taking note as well, because following that, probably there might be some also feedback from you to them at the end of their intervention. I will now shift back to ICPAC, represented by the director, Dr. Artan. We have seen and we know that ICPAC is doing the great job over Eastern Africa when it comes to actually producing climate services, but also well advanced when it comes to user engagement. One of my questions to you, if you can quickly summarize to us what are the initiatives that you are taking to ensure that all those efforts are really contributing to policy making in the region. That's number one. And number two, of course, you might have also held some high-level discussions with either the member state or other regional institutions to also push forward the contribution of your institution towards improving policies when it comes to climate change. Over to you, sir.
Why don't you, yeah, okay.
Thank you very much. And this is one of the first days I'm not competing with another speaker in another room who can shout more. First of all, let me give you a picture of where our area of focus. Our area of focus is the Horn of Africa. The Horn of Africa is a region under climate threat, challenges that are increasing by the day. Why? We don't have a climate change that everybody else doesn't have. It's because of where we are located. The Horn of Africa is one of the very few regions that are in the equator, who are right in the equator, but we have 60% of our area is arid and semi-arid. That's quite unusual. If you are on the equator, usually you have a wet region. So what that has is a marginal area where you can grow crops marginally. But if you have like 10-20% rainfall reduction, suddenly it's between growing and not growing crops. I will stop there. What we have done, as everybody was describing, one of our biggest platforms is the Garkov. Was the second globally we did right after SADC, and we just concluded the 65 Garkov, and that brings together a lot of people. In the last few months, we have finished helping Kenya to develop a national global framework. It has passed the cabinet, now it's going to the parliament. We have started doing the same thing for Uganda. We are in the process of doing a regional framework, and hopefully before the end of second quarter of next year, we'll have a regional one. We have developed a regional climate change strategy that has around 19 priority areas that has been validated by our member countries last year. It's costed. Also, we have developed a regional disaster risk management strategy. We have we create policy briefing on we're trying to move from what the weather will be to what the weather will do on sectoral things. Actually, we went even further than that. We have a website called the East Africa Hazard Watch. If you go there, you can focus on your area, country, or even district, and generate reports on, let's say, drought, how many thousand people are affected, at what level, and where. So we have we're doing in different sectors. On what what is needed is an increase in awareness and policymakers and users, especially on dissemination, and more studies on the socioeconomic effects of climate services. Beyond now, our focus has been on agriculture and water, but beyond those sectors or other sectors. And to push actually for innovative dissemination techniques, especially to reach the last mile. And lastly, finding innovative ways of funding. Money is what drives everything, so there's no funding, so we're helping even our countries drawing strategy of how it can be self-sustaining. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think, yeah, you have heard about what are the expectations of each of the decision makers, but I would still want to give the floor to Agrimet. Agrimet is a climate service provider for the West African region. And technically, what I will ask Dr. Seydou Traoré in very briefly manner to actually tell us what are the most used user interface platform across West Africa, and how do you ensure that decision makers are actually taking use of what you are producing?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. So in West Africa, we have several user interface platforms, and the main one is the Présas and Présagg climate outcome forums. Those are organized since the onset of these forums in 1998, jointly with ACMAD and the Niger Basin Authority and agreement. And it has evolved throughout the years. And initially it was named PRESAO, but in the latest years it was split into two. PRESA-GG, which is for the Guinea Gulf region, which is gathering at the end of February every year. And the PRESAS is for the Sahelian and Sudanian regions, actually which gathers all the West African countries at the end of each April. So those are the outlook forums that gathers not only climate producers such as ACMAD, AGRIMET, but also user organizations such as river basin authorities, with whom we co-produce seasonal forecasts. And also, since the onset of CLIMSA, we have also included, we invite to those forums users in the food security sector. And a day before the forum, we communicate, we discuss with them about the result of the forecast, seasonal forecast, and how to make use of those forecasts in their specific sectors. And then we communicate also in the forum. Last year, we also invited a network of journalists, so the media communicators also, for them to teach them how to interpret the result of the seasonal forecast. Another very important user interface platform in West Africa is the PREJEC and RPCA, which are actually policymakers gatherings. So PREJEC is happening twice in September and November, and based on climate information produced by AGRIMET, and we take decision about how, for example, in September, what is the likelihood of having a good or bad harvest. We already have a first information about that. And then in November, these are confirmed by the, because the grid season is over, so the decision makers are able now to project themselves. And in March and in June, there is another policy gathering called RCPA, which is actually gathers not only technicians of ministries, but also funding agencies from international organizations, humanitarian organizations, where they decide on what is the situation, food security situation in the region, how many vulnerable people and where they are, and then based on that, they decide on what action to take in order to prevent food crises. So those are the main user inter-platform we have at regional level. Again, last year, we also initiated under CLIMSA sectoral user interfaces on food security and on water resources also. Let me also inform this audience that the Executive Secretary of SILS, Dr. Abdullah Mohammadoun, just came into the room. I don't know if he will have something to add to what I just said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Seydou. Yeah, I was about to actually say our welcome to the Executive Secretary at the end of your intervention. Probably might want to say some few words. Excellence, on est en train de discuter sur le rôle que les pourvoyeurs de services climatiques peuvent jouer dans la mise en place des politiques au niveau régional. Et donc, les panélistes ont déjà donné leur point de vue là-dessus. C'est vrai qu'on est court de temps, mais on aimerait peut-être avoir juste quelques secondes d'intervention de votre part, et puis on pourra maintenant conclure la discussion. Docteur.
Merci, Monsieur le modérateur. Bonjour aux participants à cette séance. Je sais que c'est la fin, je ne vais pas prendre beaucoup de temps. Juste d'abord pour vous féliciter pour l'organisation de cet événement et compléter juste ce qu'Adi vient de dire. Je crois qu'il a déjà dit l'essentiel, docteur Seydou. Vous savez, le CILS a été créé en 1973 en réponse justement aux sécheresses qu'a connu la région à cette époque-là. Et donc depuis 50 ans, il s'est investi dans la délivrance des services, en particulier climatiques pour la région, dans le domaine surtout de la prévention. Il vient de mentionner les principaux dispositifs et instruments que nous avons au niveau de la région. Le réseau de prévention des crises alimentaires, le dispositif régional de prévention des crises alimentaires qui réunit le CIL, ses partenaires techniques, mais également l'ensemble des 17 pays de la CEDEAO, du CILS et de l'UEMOA. Et à cette occasion, toutes les données qui ont été collectées par les différents services sont exposées pour dire, voilà, pour être plus concret, nous disons au pays, voilà ce que risque d'être la prochaine saison des pluies. Il y a un risque, par exemple, de séquences de sécheresse, où il y a un risque d'inondation et par voie de conséquence, risque de déficit alimentaire, risque de déficit fourrager pour les animaux, risque de non-rechargement des nappes phréatiques, ce qui aura une incidence sur la disponibilité en eau à la fois pour les populations, mais également pour les animaux. Je veux dire que nous sommes en train de construire toute une stratégie autour de la fourniture de services climatiques de proximité, parce que les événements aussi changent avec ce qui se passe aujourd'hui dans le monde en termes surtout de conséquences des changements climatiques pour des pays comme ceux d'ici, qui sont les plus exposés et les moins préparés à y faire face. Donc je voudrais encore une fois les encourager pour la production et la délivrance des services climatiques. Merci beaucoup.
Merci bien. Je pense qu'on a largement dépassé le temps. Je voudrais faire juste le résumé en quelques 3 mots. Vous avez suivi ce que les décideurs ont comme attente au niveau des différentes structures. On n'aura pas le temps de vous donner la parole, de pouvoir donner vos feedbacks là-dessus, mais c'est quelque chose qu'il faut prendre en compte dans vos actions futures. I'm sorry, I did not realize that I continued in French. I hope it's fine. I was trying to summarize it in a few words. You heard I am talking about the accessibility of what you are producing as providers. So they want information that is actually easy to understand and also usable, fit for purpose, which also call for actually having regular meetings like those meetings, maybe longer. But you also heard about the issue of sustainability of all the actions that CLIMSA is actually supporting in terms of resource mobilization. So we think that they are also the door through which you can pass through to access those finances. Because the decision makers, once they understand better your products, they will easily support it, and of sure we will get also the necessary resources to support the member states and make sure that resilience is built when it comes to climate services. Dear panelists, I want to really thank you and apologize for my unprotocol system of conducting the meeting. It's also a learning process for me. And I wish to thank you for your availability and also taking your time to wait until all the presentations are done before you intervene. I think the public have seen that all of you have a lot of things to do, but you think that it's really important for you to address us in this topic. Thank you and have a nice day.